Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee meeting to order for this month, and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do we have any public comment this morning? Nope. Okay, we'll move on to the Executive Director's report. Good morning, Georgiana.
Good morning. Good to see everyone's faces today. I do want to give you an update on a few items. The Ellis Road Infrastructure Grant, I did mention that at the last meeting. As you remember, that the grant was submitted on August the 18th by Brevard County. On September 19th, Senator Mayfield arranged a meeting with Secretary Perdue and Secretary Tyler, which is the District 5 Secretary, and Mark Bernath and I. Mark Bernath is the County Public Works Director. We traveled to Tallahassee to meet with the two secretaries and the senator to discuss the Ellis Road project. And we really wanted to share with Secretary Perdue all of the progress that we've made on that grant development, as well as the funding. We have a 42% match to the federal grant, and so that was very significant. He was very impressed with all of the funding partners that we had. And so it was a very successful meeting. We talked about the fact that Brevard County, unfortunately, did not receive any of the Moving Florida Forward funding for a lot of our regional or strategic intermodal system priorities. However, I did mention to him that any additional funding initiatives that the governor may have on the horizon to please keep us in mind. And of course, Brevard County, we have a lot of very important SIS priorities. We have the widening of 528, the 401 bridge replacement, but we are so close to getting this project to construction, and we will continue to move forward until that happens. I also wanted to mention the new apportionment. Every 10 years after the U.S. Census, we are required to review the composition of our membership and the metropolitan planning area boundaries. And then we submit an apportionment plan. So this is a requirement that the TPO must do, and that we send that plan to the Florida Department of Transportation, and ultimately it is approved by the governor. And so we have compiled all that information. Our 2010 population was 543,376, and the 2020 population from the new census is 606,612. Of course, we are higher than that now in 2023. However, the proposed TPO board membership in this apportionment plan remains unchanged. We have 19 voting members on our TPO governing board. And so based on equitable geographic ratio from that basis, the executive committee proposed no changes to be made to the apportionment plan. So we will continue with our existing membership as we move forward, and that is going to go to our governing board on Thursday for approval. Also, you have at your place the State of the Transportation flyer, and it looks like this. And you are all invited to this event. It will take place on Wednesday, November the 15th from 8:30 to 12 p.m. right here in this room. And this is really, as you all know, we are kicking off our our 2050 long-range transportation plan and the transit development plan, which we are working with Space Coast Area Transit to combine the two plans, or to develop those plans together. And so this is really an opportunity to hear from all of our cities, Brevard County, our modal agencies, and the Florida Department of Transportation, so they can talk about their vision. And this will really help us in the development of our long-range plan. You know, quality of life, safety. I mean, all of these components of building a community so that we can have a unified vision as we move forward and build our transportation plan. So that is what the purpose of this meeting is. Each city or county will have 3 to 5 minutes. We're going to give our modal agencies at least 5 minutes. They have a lot to talk about, as well as our cities. But I think it'll be very enlightening, and I'm looking forward to that event. So again, you all are invited. And Cliff did such a great job at our last meeting, you know, reviewing all of the growth and where the future of our international airport. So it is hard to talk 5 minutes about that for sure. And then lastly, you do have the draft governing board minutes in your package. And I think that is it.
Go ahead, Adam.
Quick question, please, Georgia. Will there be a statement or some information provided from the group that you identified last month that's reviewing the possibility of a station in Cocoa? Will that be part of the state of transportation? Do you know?
We have invited Brightline.
No, not
Okay.
inviting Brightline. I'm talking about the group of citizens, business leaders and citizens that was formed earlier this year. Will they be an opportunity to give an update on what their progress has been?
Well, Laura attended the last meeting, and if you remember, she gave a rundown of our Regional Intermodal Connections Committee and the work that that group did, and she also discussed how we're going to move forward into the feasibility study.
Right.
So we are just kicking off the feasibility study, and that is where we're going to dig into what that Cocoa station will look like, the location, the siting. So all of that will be done as part of that feasibility. So did I answer your question?
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
Sarah.
Hi, how are you? I was reading this beautiful packet. Thank you, whoever put this together. It's awesome. And I noticed that the Ellis Road expansion is listed as Central Brevard. I mean, yes, and I'm from Cocoa, and I'm just wondering how Ellis Road is where does that line become the difference between Central and South? Because I saw Ellis Road listed as a Central project.
You know, when we talk about projects within each area of Brevard County is 72 miles long.
Right.
And so I don't know where exactly the location that we actually defined it being South Brevard. Laura, do you know off the top of your head?
We typically use Wickham Road.
Okay, so Wickham Road, okay, there's a east and a west on either side of Wickham Road. So you mean Pineda Causeway, maybe? For north and south? I'm just wondering how Ellis Road is Central Brevard instead of South Brevard.
Georgiana? Yeah, let me respond to that, Sarah.
Sure.
The Central Florida MPO Alliance is just a association of all the local TPOs and MPOs. So the Central, and of course we're, you know, Space Coast TPO is also a member of the Central Florida MPO.
Okay.
And the Ellis Road widening simply happens to be the #1 priority, not only of our Space Coast TPO, but also the Central Florida
Okay.
MPO. That's why it
So it's not
is
Central
listed.
Brevard, it's Central District.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Georgiana? Okay, thank you, Georgiana. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda, and we actually have 4 items today. Item A is the Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee meeting minutes from last month. That would be September 11th, 2023. The next item B is the 2050 LRTP/TDP Public Engagement Plan. Item C, Work Order 24-08K as in kilo, the Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan Scope of Services. And the final item is item D, Resolution 24-07, 2023 Mobility Week Proclamation. Can I get a motion from the TAC?
So moved.
Motion by Devin, can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Frank, and we'll send it over to the CAC.
And a motion from Josiah, and do we have a second, please?
I'll make a second. Adam Kohler.
Second from
District
Adam.
1.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
From the TAC, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda passes unanimously. Yes.
Which Frank was the second?
Frank Guertin.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That's okay.
Okay. Next is our action items. We have one action item today, and that's the 2024 legislative priorities and policy positions. And I know Georgiana will be covering that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. At your place, and it's also in your agenda package, you have our proposed 2024 legislative priorities and policy positions. So for our new members especially, each year the TPO adopts a set of priorities. And why do we do this? We really want to grow consensus on our future mobility vision. And we want to provide feedback on state policies and proposed legislation. So we also consider legislative priorities from other organizations as well, such as the Florida League of Cities, the Florida's Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Coalition, and Florida Bicycle Association. So just for the members, starting at 4 p.m. on October the 25th, the Brevard Legislative Delegation will be meeting at the Port Maritime Center, and that is at 445 Challenger Road. And I want to just go over a few of the minor updates that we have to our legislative priorities. On the very front cover, as you can see, this is our top priorities. And of course, that is increased funding for transportation that does not negatively impact the State Transportation Trust Fund. Greater flexibility for transit projects. That has always been a priority of ours. Capital and operations identified through the MPO process by removing the funding limitations for the State Transportation Trust Fund. We also want to expand regulations on distracted driving. If you open up the flyer, this is our funding section on page 2. We support state legislation that allocates and advocates for transportation funding. And this is where we mention the potential for to study a potential revenue replacement option for the current motor fuel tax. I also wanted to give the members an update. There is a senator from Palm Harbor. It's Senate Bill 28 that will impose an additional registration fee on electric and plug-in electric vehicles to make up for the lost fuel tax revenue. And he filed a similar bill last year, but it did not advance. And in this particular bill, 64% of the proceeds will be deposited into the State Transportation Trust Fund, and the remaining 36% will be allocated to the county in which the vehicle is registered and must be used for transportation purposes. So we will definitely follow this bill and see if it has any legs. This can be definitely a highly political issue, but this is a very interesting piece of legislation, and so we will definitely follow it. At the bottom of the page, this is really kind of the hands-free Florida section, and that is to support safe driving by prohibiting the handheld use of electronic wireless communication devices and other similar distracting devices while operating a motor vehicle. Almost 1/2 of all states already have enacted legislation that does this. And so we think that this is a very good policy to move forward. On page 3, if you move over to the next page, this is the only new proposed legislation that we have added, and this is Move Over for People. And it expands the current Move Over law to include people and protect vulnerable road users such as pedestrians, bicyclists, and disabled individuals using mobility devices. So this is proposed by the FBA and the FBPSC, those Florida Bicycle Associations. So So basically, the requirements would include vacating the lane being used by or next to the vulnerable road user, similar to the requirements of a vehicle. And then at the bottom, we have our top transportation projects. We updated the language on Ellis Road, and I think this is where you mentioned the Central. And the reason why we have a whole list of project priorities, more than we can count almost. And our executive committee really felt it was important that we select a few from each part of Brevard County, north, central, and south, to kind of highlight that, everyone within Brevard County has priorities. So we don't just take the very top priority and that all areas of Brevard are mentioned. And that was the thought process behind that. And then the very last page, page 4, these are our 2023 governing board members of the Space Coast TPO. And Abby has updated those new commissioners and any new members that we may have. And of course, we will potentially may have some updates to do to this next year. So this is our proposed 2024 legislative priorities and policy positions, very minor updates. And we'd like to get your thoughts on it and ask for your approval of this so that we can take this to the governing board on Thursday.
Sarah Ann.
Hi, I'm sorry to speak again, but
That's okay.
I really feel as a group, and this is probably a highly politicized issue, but I do not feel that we should be promoting any disincentive to alternative fuels. I think they are the future of our transportation system, both electric cars and electric buses. I've had the opportunity to be on a lot of different public transportation systems this year. Many of them have already fully or almost fully converted to electric buses. I do think electric is our future. Certainly our national priorities are in that direction. And I don't think we should be advocating for a disincentive for that conversion. So that's just my personal view. And I would even go as far as to move that be removed from our priority list. And I might go down on that, but I would like to make that motion.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yep.
just to respond to that, Sarah, and you're absolutely right. We certainly don't want to discourage EV users. This has been a priority on our list and for the MPOAC, which is where the 27 MPOs all get together to develop priorities as well. So this has been a priority for the whole state, and it's really not to discourage it, but electric vehicles, they put a lot of wear and tear on our roadways, and they pay zero fuel tax into the State Transportation Trust Fund. So there needs to be some sort of alternative. This may not be the answer, for sure, and it's really just to look at all options. I mean, we need to have a way to look at all options so that we have more money into the State Transportation Trust Fund. And if you look at, I think we have probably 60 to 65,000 registered EVs within Florida, somewhere around that. And eventually, as that number continues to go up, then that funding is going to, we're not going to have any money into the Transportation Trust Fund. So that is the thought process behind that.
And I agree, but I do think the answer is an increase on the fuel tax, not to disincentivize electric. So we may just disagree on how that's going to happen.
Yeah. Adam, you had something?
Yeah, I'm listening to Georgette as she's explaining that item, and I can understand where you are coming from, but I'm not so sure that's a good idea that we try to get an amount that's equal to. Maybe there's a compromise here, like 50%. Just a thought, thank you.
From the TAC, do we have any discussion on this item? If not, I would look for a motion for approval. Motion to approve by Jason. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Devin. Send it over to the CAC.
Okay, from the CAC, did you want to make that as a motion?
Yes,
Sarah?
I'd like to
Yeah.
make an amendment to the motion. I don't know about my parliamentary procedure, but I'd like to amend that we amend the motion to approve with the exception of the electric fuel fee.
Okay, do we have a second for Sarah's motion?
I'll do a second on that. Adam Kohler, District 1.
Okay, Adam seconded that motion. All in favor of Sarah's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Okay, without having to take a hand count, I think it's pretty clear that the nays carry that motion. So do we have a second motion to approve the legislative policies and provisions? Motion from Josiah Gattel, and do we have a second, please? Second from Dana Vinci. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
And from the TAC, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item carries unanimously. We'll move on to presentations. We have 4 presentations today. The first presentation is on Cyber Florida.
Mr. Chair, we found out late this morning that the gentleman, Emilio, who from Cyber Florida, is not feeling well today.
Okay.
So he is not here to present. So we will reschedule this. You do have a write-up here. I think it would have been a very interesting presentation. You have his PowerPoint presentation, and we will put this on the books for another time. So thank you.
Understood. We will move on to the next presentation, which is the 2022 State of the System. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Well, I am Andrew Garrison, and I'm here to present the results of the 2022 State of the System report. So this morning, I will go over what the SOS is, a brief refresher, and then we'll get into the countywide trends we saw, and then the results of the safety, congestion, and reliability analyses we did. So the SOS is an annual performance evaluation of Brevard County's transportation network. We look at a variety of different travel modes. So we look at the performance of the roadways, but also transit and the performance of the various ports. And then it also allows us to monitor various transportation factors, things like demographics, tourism, congestion, safety, and so on. So the reason that we conduct the SOS is there's multiple reasons. It provides technical guidance to the TPO. You get a lot of data out of this that is helpful in a lot of other projects. It's also a key component of the required congestion management system. And then at a high level, it really helps identify where federal and state dollars should be spent on the transportation network. Okay, so to get into some countywide trends, generally very good this year for some of our very important sectors. So the hotel occupancy went up. That's great to see tourism continuing to recover after COVID. We're now pretty much level with pre-pandemic levels in terms of occupancy, so that's great to see. Transit ridership saw an increase, which is also very good to see. Our airport did phenomenally with about a 90% increase in passengers from the year before. Space launches as well went up significantly, so there's a lot of people out there sending stuff up right now, so that's very exciting to see. And then at Port Canaveral, we also saw a pretty major increase in cruise passengers as cruises fully recovered. Again, that's over the fiscal year, so it was a little bit slower to catch up. And then port cargo went up as well. So all very good trends to see. All right, so then getting into safety. So this year, in the past, we've had a separate SOS severity analysis. And then I'm sure all of you have seen presentations about the Vision Zero analysis that's done. This year, we decided to combine those analyses, and our crash severity analysis was in essence just updating the Vision Zero analysis to use the most recent data from 2018 to 2022. So as a quick refresher, the Vision Zero high injury network, we're looking just at serious and fatal injury crashes. And the idea is really to identify where the most serious crashes are happening so that we can focus projects there. So getting into some of the data. So this is crash severity data for all of Brevard County. and all vehicles. You can see great news there. We saw about 11% decrease in the total number of fatal and serious injury crashes. Over on the right, that is a map that's showing the overall HIN network. So in the thinner lines and the white dots, that's the total network with all of the modes. That's pedestrians, bikes, vehicles, and motorcycles. And then in that, what color is that? I think that's like a greenish color maybe. That is the top 10 vehicle intersections and segments in the HIN. So those are specifically where we see a lot of serious vehicle crashes. So unsurprisingly, with the amount of volume, I-95 really shows up a lot, but you also see a couple intersections on Malabar Road, a couple on State Road 520, and so on. All right. So moving on, we also have our vulnerable road users. So that's the bikes, pedestrians, and motorcycles. And what you see here, that first chart is just showing the crashes in Brevard County for those modes. So unfortunately, we did see a continued uptick in the number of crashes for those users. So we'll continue to monitor that. We also on the right have a map showing those. It's got, first of all, overlaid in the background, that overall HIN again, just so you can kind of see the full scope of what we're looking at for these serious injury crashes and fatal crashes. But then we also have the top 5 segments for each of those vulnerable road user modes. So a couple things stand out to me. You see a cluster of intersections for, I think that's bicycles down in the Palm Bay Road area. You see Courtney Parkway has a couple of overlapping segments, and then of course you've got the number 1 segments that are highlighted as well. All right, so our safety analysis also included a review of crash frequency as well. We want to also just see where are the most crashes happening. So this first chart shows you just total number of crashes in Brevard County. So again, similar to the severity crashes for vehicles, or on that first slide, we saw a decrease. So again, that's very good to see. And then that map on the right is showing just the top 10 segments and intersections for vehicle crashes. So again, not very surprising to see I-95 on the top of that list. And then finally, we have our crash frequency for the vulnerable road users. So similar to the crash severity, you also have an uptick in crashes just overall for these vulnerable road users. And then that map on the right shows you where the top 5 segments and intersections are for each of these modes. So I think the one that stands out to me the most is that Malabar Road at San Filippo Drive, that each of the modes, that intersection is showing up in the top 5. So we'll be monitoring that intersection. All right, so then moving on to congestion. So in addition to safety, another big part of our analysis is looking at traffic volumes. So this first slide is pretty straightforward. It's just showing these segments and intersections that have the highest volume. Nothing too surprising here, I'd say. You'd see Malabar Road, Palm Bay Road, US 1, Wickham, those sorts of areas showing up. This is pretty similar to what we've seen in previous years. So then in addition to looking at just overall roadway volumes, we also look at congestion. The way we do this is by using something called a volume to capacity ratio. So we just take the overall daily volume on the roadway and divide it by the overall daily capacity of the roadway. If your ratio is over 0.85, we would consider that congested. And then if you get above 1, that's a roadway with some serious issues. Kind of going to the conversation we had about Ellis, we really see why this is such a high priority to see Ellis at the top of that list and above 1. But then there are some other roadways scattered throughout as well that are pretty congested too. Okay, so then our final piece of analysis that we did this year is new for us. So in addition to looking at congestion, one of the ways that we can think about the performance of roadways is by looking at reliability. So congestion says how much volume is there throughout the day, the whole day, compared to that daily capacity. Reliability, we can look at specific time periods and say, how does your travel time compare day to day? So obviously, if a road is congested and it takes you 30 minutes to get home every time, and you're going 2 or 3 miles, that's unfortunate. But it's also a problem if one day it takes you 30 minutes, and the next day it takes 45, and the next day it takes 15, because you don't know how to plan your day around that. So reliability helps us to track that and put some numbers to that and be able to say these are areas that are consistently unreliable and travel times vary a lot, which is, I think, a problem that most people would have. So the way that we do this is we take the 80th percentile travel time over the course of the year, and then we divide that by the 50th percentile travel time. Got an example down here, and basically, a very simple example, if 50% of the time it takes 30 minutes to get to your destination, and then 20% of the time it takes 50 minutes, if you divide 50 minutes by 30 minutes, you're gonna get a ratio of 1.67. So that, in that example, that would be an unreliable roadway. So we take all of that data and do a lot of processing of it, and we end up with these maps for different time periods. In our analysis, we looked at 5 different time periods. So we looked at just the weekday daily, then we looked at the weekday AM and PM peaks, and then finally we looked at the weekend daily and the peak season daily. We considered the peak season to be March, kind of around spring break when there are a lot of people coming to the beach and that sort of thing. And really what kind of comes out of this, it's much more about like looking at areas that are consistently unreliable over different time periods. We're just starting to get a handle on this data, but there's a couple areas that kind of stand out. There's a few in Titusville that are consistently unreliable over kind of in the downtown Titusville area. You've got Cocoa near 528, and then there's a couple down in the Palm Bay and Melbourne areas. And I'll go ahead and flip through these slides really quick. Yeah, so that's the AM and the PM. Again, this is not as much about like which segment is it yellow or red at any time, but it's more about where they're consistently seeing these trends. So we're still kind of getting, this is our first time running an analysis, we're still getting our handle on it and thinking about how we can use this data, but there are some interesting things you can do with this toolkit in your box. If you think about what causes a roadway to be unreliable, I mean, there could be different things. Like if a roadway is prone to having crashes happen a lot, that could be one thing that really slows down or makes your travel time very unreliable. If there's a crash every other week, then generally speaking, you're not going to know when that's happening. So it could be pointing to a safety issue, but maybe there's signal timing issues, and we could be looking at like a retiming study or something like that. So this is like our first look at the data. We're excited to kind of dig into this more in future years and think about if there are ways to use this data to think about looking at projects more broadly. But yeah, at that point, that's the end of our presentation, so I'd be happy to take any questions. Yes?
Under this slide for Vision Zero High Injury Network, I guess it was the opposite, that I thought intersections would always have more crashes than...
Yeah, let me get to that slide for you just so I can answer that with a little bit more.
Okay,
nuance.
wow, that's loud. Under Vision Zero High Injury Network, it was the opposite result. So what does that mean, that there's more crashes along segments than there are intersections?
So what that's saying is that our high injury network has 53, like for example, for the vehicles, actually, I'll go back to that slide really quick. There we go. Yeah, so we're saying that our HIN has 53 roadway segments in it for vehicles and 38 intersections. And we're kind of dialing this and looking at where the crashes are and trying to find a natural breakpoint to say if you've got like 1 or 2 fatalities, maybe that's a natural breakpoint. It kind of varied depending on the data because vehicle crashes will have a lot more severe crashes than bike crashes will. So we had to kind of dial it a little bit. We used the same methodology to hone in on the updated HIN that was used in previous HIN efforts. So this isn't the total number of crashes happening, it's just how many segments made it into that list. Any other questions? Yeah.
There's a lot of reductions in the percentage on the statistics. Do you know, as part of your analysis, what caused the decrease, so we can keep doing that?
Yeah. Well, I think the TPO has done a great job at implementing and working towards safety in a lot of different areas. One thing, too, that just is kind of a general trend kind of throughout the country is that COVID caused a big spike, at least in severe crashes. I mean, it really kind of shook up the whole country. So it changed crash patterns. The big thing we saw was crash severity went up even with less people on the roadway because people were driving faster. So everything's kind of equalizing towards the mean. So I think there is a little bit of that where things are just kind of going back to normal. But I do think that the TPO has done a great job with some safety projects. So
It's very interesting because we're at the port, we're having more vehicles coming, guests coming on their cars instead of coming through the airport. So it's good that there's less accidents and injuries in the road.
yeah.
Peter, you had something?
Adam?
Yes. Do you look into the causes of the crashes?
Not in this analysis because we're doing like a countywide analysis. I mean, if I go back to this slide, if you add those up, there's about 70,000 crashes over our time period. So we can't really do a full, like a detailed look at all the crash reports. The TPO has done things like road safety audits in the past where you look at a specific corridor and you may even get down to reading individual crash reports to say what exactly happened here. Is there something very specific that could be fixed and kind of make the problem go away? But for our purposes, we're just doing a very high level trend tracking sort of thing.
And the system by which data is collected, can you give us
Sure.
a brief, where do you get the data from?
Yeah, so this is coming from an organization called Signal 4 Analytics, and they are run by the University of Florida. They're pulling their crash data from the Florida Highway Patrol's crash reports. So those crash reports are kind of all combined together, and then they have data you can pull. You can pull it for a corridor, but in this case, we just pull it for all of Brevard County over this time period.
Do you look at the reliability of the data?
What do you mean exactly? Like in terms of duplicates or making sure that things aren't wrong, basically?
Well, a lot of police are busy.
Yeah. So we do have to account for that. We do make sure that there aren't duplicates of crashes or anything like that. At this point, at this level, again, we're just kind of trying to get general trends. FDOT tracks its own data too, and that's a little bit further behind because they're very meticulous about making sure that the data is accurate. But the data is like we'd have access to I think about 2020 right now because they are like several years behind. So for our purposes, we tend to use Signal 4, even though it might not be quite as reliable. You have access to the data sooner, and we think that's a better trade-off.
I would be curious to know what, for example,
Peter, if you would, the microphone.
I'd be curious to know, what percent of the crashes is due to DUI or drugs or what have you.
Yeah.
And what percent is due to, because we're voting on these things all the time. What percent is, you have your cell phone in your hand?
Yeah, I think you might have one of those brochures for the sauce over there. I don't know if it got to your desk or not, but we do have some of those crash statistics.
It's on page 2 at the bottom.
Yep, so we've got the distracted driving statistics, and we've got the DUI, or basically driving under the influence, either alcohol or drugs. So it's not insignificant.
Haven't had time to look at it.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, it makes for interesting reading, seeing those trends go up and down too.
Thank you.
Adam?
Yeah, I find the information that you're presenting interesting from a trend analysis. The use of a computer now makes it very easy for us to manage large quantities of data. And I would be interested to know, and I would think your group would be interested to know how an area changes over time Does it get worse? Does it get better? And we may be able to predict an area that's going to be really bad in 10 years by watching the trends, just as we do with our own information when we see a doctor. He can look at our statistics from 5 and 10 years ago, and he can say, Adam, you've got a problem here. The last 2 years, the numbers have been going up really quick, and you need to be doing something different here. I'm just wondering if people are looking at it from that perspective at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of data to process through. I think for the purposes of the sauce, again, we're just trying to kind of understand what's happening. But things like the Vision Zero HIN, that's kind of, I think the TPO is in the process of updating that and using that to go after grants and stuff like that. And that is a more focused approach to look at, to be more proactive and think about where are areas that may not be
Thank you.
a problem. Yeah. Yes.
Again, that's a beautiful presentation. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. I'm a little concerned about the vulnerable people. That's the one statistic that's going up in
Yeah.
terms of our crashes. And I just want to commend the TPO because I'm always having something hitting my mailbox. We did this for bicycle safety. We did this. We did this. Pretty fantastic. But in areas where we have a high correlation between the location of crashes and the number of vulnerable people who are using that intersection, and I'm most familiar with the POCO places that are on those maps, do we have a specific strategy or prioritizing of that particular situation? And just one thing I've noticed as a pedestrian is that often there's not a whole lot of time to cross 520 and the King Street. Those crossings are quick if you're on foot. That's just one observation data set of one. So I'm wondering if we have any strategy that's specifically geared towards that one disturbing statistic that keeps going up.
I don't know, Laura, do you want to speak to that at all? Yeah, maybe Shelby.
Yeah, Shelby, Mr. Chair, if I might, Shelby is going to be presenting on the high injury network and what she's doing from a Vision Zero standpoint. So we have a lot of different strategies. And we can't do it all on our own. We have to have all of our local governments helping us. It's a shared responsibility. So Shelby should dig into that a lot more and answer some questions.
Thank you. Yeah. I also wanted to point out, it appears that the pedestrian crashes are going down, which is great. Year over year, it was about 15%, but the bicycle crashes have gone up significantly, about 28% year over year, which is, I don't know why. It's my understanding that through the pandemic, there was a lot more people buying and riding bikes. So although that happened, once the pandemic was over 2022, the crashes went up. So I'd be interested to know why that is. So
Because there's more e-bikes.
okay, I didn't know e-bikes was included in the bicycles.
Ginger, you had something?
That's my question is, are you evaluating e-bikes and golf carts into this statistic?
I would have to go back and look at how that is considered, because we're basically just taking whatever, like I said, Signal 4 is providing us the data, and it's just and that kind of goes back to the writing the crash reports. It's really just kind of how the officer decides and defines what happened. I would guess in most cases, those are so similar to just a typical bicycle that, and at least in terms of how they look, that maybe the officer is, but I can't really say how exactly they're being included.
Yeah, but for emergency services, fire opportunity with these electric vehicles comes into play and is much more hazardous.
Yeah, no, that's definitely an emerging thing that will be interesting to just kind of see how people try to account for that, for sure.
Also, one other question is, are you possible to overlay this data with Strava information? Because every bike rider and runner in the country has one of these on, being tracked for their activity.
We haven't considered that, but that would be very interesting to just kind of see if crash areas are overlaying with high-density bike routes. Yeah, we haven't considered that, but that could be something really interesting to look at.
And then what takes the delay in getting the data processed? Because this is 2023 almost over here.
Well, the big thing for us is as we're doing our crash analysis, we want to do complete years. So as we start, kind of all of this data is going back to 2022 because 2023 is still ongoing. So we wouldn't have a full data set.
Right.
So everything is a little bit like a year behind, but we're trying to look at that complete data set.
So when's this data made available to you, though?
We could get it now. We just, obviously, we wouldn't have
I'm-
all of 2023.
I'm just thinking I expected to see 2022 done by the first quarter of 2023.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that just kind of comes down to how we place where we do the SOS analysis. The crash data may be available, but things like traffic counts may not be completely processed for the previous year. So we have a lot of different data sources that we bring into the SOS, and we kind of want to make sure they're all kind of available at the same time, so we can.
Anything I can do to help you stop those delays from happening?
Laura,
Well, it's
Very much
just,
so.
I used to be a market research analyst for Bombardier Sea-Doo, and data's available, just why is it taking so long?
Understood. You know, the Space Coast TPO has a very extensive data collection on traffic volumes.
Right.
We will not be done processing the 2023 until probably next May.
Wow.
We apply seasonal factors. Those are generated by the Florida Department of Transportation. Those aren't even available until April or May. So our annual report for the prior year is pretty much produced and published in June for the whole prior year.
Wow.
You got to remember, these are thousands of data points that we're
No, I know.
using. So it's not just the counts, as Andrew was saying, it's also the crash statistics, and you need to wait at least 6 months for it to really be a significantly valid source to use.
Interesting.
And we use the ports data, EDC, I mean, there's a lot of data points that are used. So
Wow.
it may close December 31st, but for all that to be collected, analyzed, and processed, it takes about 6 months, and then we have them come in and put it all together.
Wow.
Any other questions?
Michael?
I think
For
we got
Andrew?
a couple over here.
Yeah, I just, back to what Ginger was saying, just breaking down a lot of that data which she was talking about, it'd be interesting to see what, again, whether it was kids, whether it's adults, whether it's the electric bicycles that are coming into play more, because obviously we all see them, they're very fast, and also scooters and all that kind of stuff, is that part of the equation? So it would be good to try to dig into some of that data, even
Sure.
as laymen, so to speak, for future reference.
Yeah, I think in the past, the Vision Zero plan has looked at demographics a little bit more. The Signal 4 data doesn't have age, for example, so that's kind of going back to those balances. We want to have the data available, but it may not have every single statistic to look at, and then you also just don't want to paralysis by analysis and dig into every single data point. You also want to move towards thinking about implementation for certain things.
So much of that is computerized, that maybe put in algorithms and all that, and kind of dig it out that way. That's all.
Gil, you have a question?
I was making more of a statement. This group is very interested in safety, and it just so happens that District 5 right now is working on the procurement of an artificial intelligence-based system that is going to be able to track the motion of vehicles on its network using cameras. Any camera available to the district will be able to be used by the system to start tracking not only crashes, but locations where near misses occur. That system will revolutionize the way that we do our work. Not only will it be able to do that, but it'll also be able to do traffic counts. It'll be able to do things like measuring speeding, right? Red light running. Anything that a human would be able to detect over that camera, that system will eventually learn to use. And it'll be able to generate statistics, they're hoping, at a scale perhaps once every 5 or 6 minutes. So the folks who are at the state are not taking this lying down. When you guys are asking for crashes, why can't we do it faster? There's a process and there's a system and it takes time. But the department is working right now. I mean, we're talking about right now. We're working on writing those RFPs to get that system in place and start it moving. So it's evolving, and it's going to get better. And the very things that you guys are all concerned about are being addressed right now. And I think within the next year, we may be having a very different conversation about safety in this room as these systems start getting deployed statewide, including here. Right now, there's a pilot project ongoing using this technology, and some of the intersections are within Brevard County. So it's coming. You got to be patient. You got to give it time, but it is coming. You know, Adam, it was your conversation that kind of made me come out and say, because in your head, you had an idea for this very system. It's already in the works. That's all.
Thank you, Gil.
Follow-up question.
Go ahead, Christy.
One last question. Any chance that we could use a factor like reliability for the TPO grants, like the annual grants? Because I know there's different things that you all put into those grants that you want to see, but I think reliability is a great one, especially since there's a road segment and intersection in West Melbourne that is highly impacted by reliability.
Well, I think, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, of course.
certainly that when you're talking about the annual grants, when we do our call for projects, absolutely. I mean, that information, the whole reason why we have this system is a tool that's going to help us know where the problems are. That is the reason why we do this. It's our congestion management system. And so pulling out the information, and it's a lot of information, it's shared with our local governments to use to formulate projects that can then be added to the priority list, and to share this with DOT. So I'm so looking forward to the future with what Gil is saying. It's going to, with technology, it's just really going to change how we do everything, and the roads we travel on and how we travel. So looking forward to that, but yes, the new reliability component is very interesting, and we'll definitely be using that.
Thank you, Georgiana. Anyone else? Okay, thank you,
Thank you
Andrew.
very much.
Yeah, really appreciate you being here this morning.
Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to get an update related to Vision Zero. It's the Vision Zero annual update.
Good morning, everyone. So I know you're all really excited about safety. Thank you for giving all of your data questions to Andrew, so I don't have to answer them. All right, so we're actually going to talk a little bit about some of those things. But I'm really excited to give you all an update just on kind of where we have been this past year in terms of our Vision Zero program. So before we get started, I do just want to give a little bit of background on Vision Zero and kind of what we've built thus far. So if you don't know, Vision Zero, it is identified as a strategy to eliminate all traffic fatalities and serious injuries while also increasing safety, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. And that's important because it's not this goal of it's this goal of getting more people out and using other modes, right, while also saving lives. We don't just want fewer people to be out getting around. I think it's really important, too, to also note that this isn't the elimination of all crashes, right? People make mistakes, things happen. The goal is not to get rid of all crashes, which would be nice, but it's that if a crash happens, you're going to walk away from that crash, right? Get some insurance information and head home. So I think that's a key distinction here that I want people to always remember, is that we want to eliminate serious injury and fatality crashes. So just for those of you who may not have been around, we adopted our resolution in 2019, so that's when the TPO formally adopted Vision Zero resolution, and then our action plan was published a year later in July. So we've been working on that action plan, or using that action plan and those strategies outlined during that time to make strides in Brevard, and that's kind of where we are today, just a few years later, and moving forward from that. So a little more data for you. not to get too much in the weeds, but I actually think you'll be really excited about this because what I've done is I've pulled some of that Signal 4 data that Andrew used for the sauce for 2023. So some of the stuff that you're talking about. I have to put a big asterisk on that because as you've heard, this data isn't quite finalized. We actually have to wait 60 days to even see these crash reports to see this data. And so this is only through January to July of this year. But I think it's important to kind of take a look at that stuff as it's happening and have a little more of a real world perspective. So I wanted to share that information with you. So looking at this year so far, what we have available, there have been 254 fatal and serious injury crashes here in Brevard. And so to compare that with the previous couple of years, we're seeing fewer fatals, which, always a good thing, but more serious injuries and just slightly more fatal and serious injury, total overall. And so I wanted to give you a minute to kind of see that, see the trend there. And I wanted to break that down from a vulnerable road user perspective. So I know the sauce kind of gives them all as one big chunk, but to really dive deep into how we break those down. 40% of all of those fatal and serious injury crashes are actually vulnerable road users. So those are your bicyclists, your pedestrians, and your motorcyclists. Those others are your drivers, motorists, but also maybe moped riders, could be golf cart riders, really whatever law enforcement checks off in that box. And I like the comments earlier about kind of that ambiguity there of what they check. It really is up to law enforcement, kind of what they put in that box. So you do kind of have to take that with a grain of salt unless you were to take the time to dig into every single crash report and see what's in that narrative. But for the most part, if it's a bicyclist or a pedestrian, you can usually guess that it's on point there. I thought what was really interesting, what I wanted to pull out for you guys here was this comparison to 2023. So what we're seeing here is that bicyclists and pedestrians are actually taking up a smaller percentage of the fatal and serious injury totals this year so far as compared to last year. And that's not year over year for the total year. This is just January to July. So my takeaway from that, just from my professional opinion, is that it could be a discrepancy in crash reporting from those new micromobility devices. I don't know if law enforcement's checking a one wheel or a fancy e-bike as an other, or if they're checking it as a bicycle, I don't know. So they could be falling into the others, which is skewing bicyclists into other. Or it could also be, we've had a really hot summer. I don't know about you guys. I was taking way less walks this year than I usually do. So maybe as the temperature's cool, more people are getting out biking and walking, the numbers could go back up. We don't know. But I just wanted to point that out because I thought that was interesting to see when those groups are usually a little bit higher. Further breaking this down, here's what we're seeing so far for pedestrians this year in comparison to other years. So as we see here, fewer pedestrian fatalities, actually a lot fewer. So again, that's great to see. Not sure if that's because fewer people are out walking because of the heat or not, but on par with the serious injuries of past years. Bicyclists, again, fatalities are hovering about the same, but fewer serious injuries. And our motorcyclist crashes are up. I'm seeing a lot of motorcyclist crashes. I get Google alerts every time there's a crash and we get a media hit about it. I see it, so these are definitely up, and I know even since the July totals were in, I've seen crashes since then. So definitely a lot going on with our motorcyclist community, and I know that'll be a big focus moving forward with our education and efforts there. And so one thing I want to draw attention to, especially since it's just been a lot of data today, is to remember that these numbers, they're people, right? I think it's really easy to forget that sometimes. These are lives, they're mothers and husbands and children. And so to really, if anything, leave here today with that thought of these aren't just data points on a chart, right? These are lives. And that's kind of the key takeaway here, that these are lives represented by crashes that are preventable and that we want to kind of do our part to really prevent. So that's why I'm glad to have everyone here today and have everyone so passionate about safety and knowing that we need to work together to really move the needle. And that's what we focus on with the Vision Zero program. So just to recap some of the work that we've been doing this year. So as of December 2022, right after our last annual update, we received 100% adoption of our resolutions here in Brevard County. So the county, each of our municipalities, and even our school board have signed resolutions committing to Vision Zero. So they're committing to saying, hey, enough is enough, and we want to do all we can to get this number to zero. In terms of how we all kind of work together collaboratively each and every day, our Vision Zero leadership team, several of you serve on it. Thank you. We meet quarterly to talk through our action plan, to talk through what's going on in our cities, and I think that'll shape up a lot more in the next year as well as we work through our updates that we'll talk about here in a minute. In June, we did host our Vision Zero Taking Action Together workshop, which was great. We talked about some good strategies there. And then on a regular basis, the TPO is great. My team is wonderful in terms of bringing safety into every conversation we have on several things, but as well as our community traffic safety team and our pedestrian and bicycle safety coalition is a wonderful place for us to come in and help make some changes at a higher level. One of the biggest undertakings we've had this year, which is rolling into next year as well, is spearheading an update to our action plan. No, it is not just us changing the colors on the front. There is some updates happening on the inside as well. So we are really adjusting the goals and objectives to really align with some new best practices. When the action plan first came out, there was really more of a focus on that 4E approach to safety. We're shifting a little bit more into the safe systems approach and really adopting some of those best practices that have come out since it first was adopted. The biggest change and one of the things that spearheaded this update was that we are updating the plan to meet requirements to apply for new federal funding opportunities, specifically the Safe Streets for All grant. And if you haven't heard about that, so this is a large effort grant. This is not an easy Google form to fill out. This is a $2.5 million to $25 million implementation grant, projects that require lap certification and local matches. So we are supporting our municipal partners and county partners to explore projects that really maximize impact. How do we look at that high injury network, see those roadways that are causing these serious injuries and fatalities, and really work to make them safer roadways. And so we're currently working with 4 interested agencies to see, do we have projects that align with these and can then become, hopefully, get this funding and move forward and have projects and ultimately safer roads. So we're really excited about this opportunity, getting this update, and hopefully going after this funding with some partners. And then on a smaller local level, obviously our public involvement team, Abby and myself, we work really hard to do education and outreach every day, it feels like. But so during this year, we've participated in 43 outreach opportunities. I don't think there's anything we really turn away. So trainings, tablings, presentations, you name it. We've covered 10 of the municipalities, but really prioritizing and hitting those high injury network areas. Education's just been a huge part of kind of what we're doing, and we like to kind of look at those crash patterns of those things that are happening and see how can we align the education to hopefully meet that need. And we are also maximizing our digital reach as well. So we know everyone's on social media, everyone's looking there, and so not only sharing photos and things like that, but how can we take education, make it digital, and get that pushed out? So hopefully serving as a resource for our local partners to see education online, to share that messaging, and to start the conversation. My favorite thing is actually to see people comment on our post or share our post and remind their fellow, their network essentially, that they should be following laws as well, or hey, did you know this? Our school bus safety one's my favorite. That one always seems to take off. People don't seem to know when they need to stop for the school bus. So always a great one, and we love to promote that messaging. So we have our work cut out for us. We have a lot of work to do all the time, but we're really excited, especially for our action plan update. So with that is going to come some new strategies and new objectives. Apologies, I'm not sure, I don't remember specifically who asked the question. I think that was you, Sarah Ann. It's going to come with some great strategies and objectives that we're really going to dig into specifically of how we take our next steps moving forward. We will be working with our municipalities and county to see if we can apply for some of that Safe Streets funding to adjust that built environment on some of these high injury network roadways, and then obviously continuing our target outreach in priority areas along our HIN. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Bill?
We've seen a lot of statistics today, which I think is really, really great. We also heard about the population increase. Is there any sensitivity for these figures to the population increase?
So I focus on the crashes, as they happen. I know that we look at population increase as we look at, congestion and road management. So.
Yes, I think through the State of the System report, which Andrew just presented on, looking at those trends is all part of the State of the System. So you are looking at the trends and the congestion as well as the overall.
So are the trends absolute versus if the population goes up by 10%, is that an indicator that's driving the trends?
That is definitely getting into the weeds a little bit. I would have to defer to Andrew and let him talk about that a little bit more.
Come on up, Andrew. Thank you.
I don't normally get this many questions about this stuff. Yeah, all these trends are interconnected, but it's hard to say exactly how related they are. I will say, like you said, Brevard County's population has just continued increasing pretty steadily. So you have more people in the county, the likelihood of people getting into crashes goes up as well. It's hard to tie those things together. For example, like we looked at, the crash frequency overall went down even though the population did go up in 2022. So it's not necessarily means that crashes are going to go up, population goes up, but that is something you're fighting against. Just if density increases, the chances of crashes increases.
Yeah, Sarah?
I may be a little too simplistic here, but maybe one way to make that data even more valuable would be to do it on a per capita basis. I think that's what you're getting to also, that if we take those same statistics, instead of giving them as absolute statistics that don't have any population growth sensitivity, we could do it per capita, and then that would definitely incorporate what you're talking about.
At least the second way of looking at it.
Yes. Yes, I think it's a great way of looking at it because we're continuing to grow. Our county's getting bigger all the time, so.
Yeah, we've never considered looking at crashes per capita, but that could be an interesting thing to consider.
Yeah, Adam?
District 1, I'm sorry, Adam Kohler. On the quarterly meetings with the Vision Zero leadership team, is that comprised of the different municipalities? Or is that a team that's within the TPO?
So initially it was formed, each city that signed a resolution put forth a representative. As we roll into the new year and our new action plan is adopted, we're exploring how to incorporate more stakeholders that would make that beneficial, because obviously other people have roles to play in that. It's not just the cities that have a stake in the game. So currently, yes.
I'm ready for another. I'm getting ready with another question. Are these meetings in the same place within the county, or do they move around?
Currently, they are rotating, so they're getting hosted by different.
Thank you. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I do want to note, Cliff, to the point of the per capita, I think is important. But one thing I want to note, just with Vision Zero as a whole, I think it's that idea of zero, right? So I think when you apply that concept of the percentage, it's still 1 is 1, right? I think anything over 0 is kind of the message. I did want to throw that out there, but it does help when you kind of look at the percentage.
Yeah, Junior?
You made an interesting statement earlier in your presentation about it takes 60 days to get information off the crash reports. Why so long?
There was a statutory change.
What was the motive for the statutory change?
Privacy, I believe. I'd have to double check.
Just general information about the crash in general, not worrying about
It's,
who, but just,
yeah, so with the crash reporting system with Signal 4, you actually not only, and specific agencies get access to this, not only do you have access to the data as numbers, but you actually have access to the full crash report. So you can pull the names, you can pull their information and all of that information. So that is all now delayed by 60 days.
okay. And is Vision Zero going to address roads being swept, foliage being trimmed back from the sidewalks for visibility, fixing the sidewalks that have been cracked up all over this county?
I would like it to. I think part of what I would like to see more of, and you know, it takes a village, is hopefully empowering our communities to not only, you know how to word this, empowering our community members to want more for their communities, you know, to be their own advocates. And if the people in our communities want to walk or bike more and not just get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, then we need them to go talk about that, right? And if they are seeing issues with foliage or cracked sidewalks, I want them to know how to go talk to their leaders about that. And so I hope so, yes. I do want that to be part of what we're working on.
I'm seeing more people, because people are moving to this area, and they express a large amount of disappointment of lack of facilities, lack of contiguous, like interlocking in the Suntree area. That sidewalk was damaged beyond compare, and it has been sitting there, I don't know how many months. I was trying to reference it, but these are 4 or 5 months for people to not be able to utilize it. They did no improvement on the interlocking to recognize the golf carts, the bicycle riders that choose to ride in the roads. They only addressed the drainage and cracked up the sidewalk and then left it for 6 months. They're finishing it off now.
Yeah. Well, Centuries, I mean, it's a good example of a gap, right? So they're not currently represented on our leadership team. So we don't necessarily have a great connection there. So how can we engage that community, right, and see how we can best serve? So it is something we're addressing in our new strategies update of how, you know, with even us just as a small team, how we can kind of get everyone together and tackle.
I might have somebody for the list, and it won't be me. I know somebody.
Thank you, Ginger. No, it's a great point.
Yeah, Arlen.
Okay, reference the bushes and stuff on over the sidewalks and so forth. I have one answer on that. See something, say something.
Yes.
Go back to your city or the city that you're riding your bike or walking in and inform them that, hey, these bushes are hanging over. I mean, I've had that several times. I ride my bike frequently, and they go out and they trim them back, and it makes a big difference.
It is.
And something else with this population explosion that we have seen here, yes, we do have more bicycle accidents, and that don't surprise me because we have more construction equipment out there. You got these big trailers coming down here that are wide. They take up almost the whole width. And I tell you what, I ride the sidewalk almost all the time, but when I'm going down there, I see all these big trucks. They're over into the bicycle lane, sometimes all the way to the grass. And until we get them under control, we're going to continue to have more accidents and so forth.
Correct. No, I think that's a great point, Arlen. And I you know, that's one of the reasons I pulled out that that pie chart to show those vulnerable road users. You know, we hear a lot about e-bikes and bicyclists and pedestrians. We can see from the chart, they're not all other, right? 60% of these crashes, these fatals and serious injuries, a lot of those are drivers. They're happening on our big crashes that are happening probably on our 95s and our, you know, major intersection crashes. And every life matters. You know, I don't want to see 8 bicyclists killed by any means. But when we talk about prioritizing, right, how can we have the biggest impact? We do need to, you know, also put some effort into what's happening in terms of speeding, aggressive driving, things like that. So I agree. I mean, we are looking at exploring some opportunities to do some safe cycling stuff as well to help cyclists kind of mitigate that too on their part. Ginger?
On the foliage thing, I seem to be ground zero for a lot of my customers to come in and ask me to have the bushes trimmed or the sidewalk, and I can't do it for the whole county. It would be lovely if there was some centralized area that we could access. They could just send an email that someone that knew the resources or the location of the person to contact in order to address these problems.
Oh, good comment. Maybe we can find a place to get that out there. Any other questions? One last comment. I did give everybody a Vision Zero fan, so yes, thank you, Adam. Part of the goal is to not only share the information, but get the word out of what Vision Zero is. So feel free to keep it, hang it up at your office, share it, take it to church, give it away. But we want people to know what Vision Zero is, and hopefully next time they see it, they'll know and they can spread the word. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shelby. Good job. Next is Public Participation Plan Measures of Effectiveness Annual Report. Welcome back, Abby.
Yes, I know. We're so happy to have her back. Before Abby gets started, I just want to say, Shelby does such an amazing job for us and for the community. I don't know what it is about that position. You got to have more energy than I can ever imagine. And Shelby and Abby make an amazing team from a public information involvement standpoint and safety. And so I'm just so blessed. We're so blessed to have them representing our county and doing all the great work that they do.
Thank you for saying that. Agreed.
Yep.
Well, just to add on to that, because Georgiana took what I was going to say. No, I just wanted to add on to that, Shelby came into a role that was held by someone for 20 years, which is not an easy thing to do, I'm sure you're all aware of that. So she's done a fantastic job to elevate us. And when I talk about our measures of effectiveness today for public participation, she plays a large role in that as well. So good morning, everyone. As I mentioned, I haven't been here for a couple months because I've been on maternity leave, so I'm very happy to be back. For those who don't know me, because I see a few new faces in the crowd today, my name is Abby Hemingway, and I'm the Public Information and Outreach Manager for the Space Coast TPO. And today, we're going to talk about more statistics. But this is a little different. We're going to talk about the tools that we use to communicate to the public and their effectiveness. So I just want to note that the report that we're going to go over, one, is in your package, and two, this is not a mandatory requirement to do this report, unlike our public participation plan, which is. That's every 3 years. This is more of an accountable document for us to help us monitor our engagement tools and to also just to be transparent and review how we continue to strengthen our public involvement activities and look for those gaps of maybe we need to add a new tool or add a new deliverable. So the first thing we're going to talk about, this is a brief overview of the different public participation methods and tools that we use to engage the public in the process of transportation planning. That's really the goal of what we want the public to understand. On the flip side, we also want to talk about traffic safety awareness and that they have a role to play in that as well. So, when it comes to public participation, face-to-face meetings, they've been a long time standard practice. Of course, over the last few years, we've seen how virtual public involvement and integrations are really now an expectation, especially for government agencies. So, communities, they may want to meet in person, but offering a virtual component, such as watching it live today, is beneficial for those who prefer that virtual participation or want to be in the know. Many people can't come to a daytime meeting, right? So they can go back and watch it later. And all of these methods are really avenues to ensure that the public has multiple ways to participate, and it increases our reach as an agency. Oh, wait, sorry. The tools that we use, you're going to notice down on the bottom of the slide here, these are multiple methods that we use, and these are mainly digital, right? That's how people like to consume information now. We still have the flyers, which are great, which are at your seat today, but most of our information comes through digitally to our members, to our community stakeholders, and to our partners. And then I'll touch on that a little bit more in the next few slides of what are most successful for us. So when we're thinking about methods and tools, it's really important to recognize how we reach and engage underrepresented populations and communities of concern. We acknowledge that not everyone has equal access to public information, and so in order to provide equitable participation, we have appropriate messages and deliver techniques that are developed for project-specific studies or plans, and we ensure that that communication and dialogue is established for every plan and project that we do. And this list details some of those primary stakeholders and agencies that we work with. But I want to make special note for this year, and this is where Shelby comes into play with her expertise and her background. This year specifically, and moving forward in our public information and outreach program, we are to contribute to the Vision Zero efforts and to align with our action plan. We are targeting trending behaviors by planning public safety outreach events and activities along our high injury network, because we want to make sure that we are going to the places that need more information or more awareness about traffic safety and those key behaviors. And then we're also going to address making sure that we're going to communities of concern that might have gaps in knowledge or need some, extra input from the TPO. So this is our goal. This is a brief recap of some of the methods that we use, and I want to add that this summary and report is not a quantitative tool. It's more qualitative because, while we do have an overreaching target that we want to meet, or be close to, within reach of that, we're not comparing year over year, because when it comes to public involvement, we can have a pandemic. We can have things that happen. Certain plans or projects require 5 public meetings versus 1. So we want to make sure that we're keeping track of it, but also give ourselves some grace in a few areas. On the flip side of that, we have nearly tripled our public outreach events this year and activities, which I'm giving Shelby kudos for that, because I know that is, one of her plans and areas of that she plans throughout the year. And so, what we've seen out in the community, whether that's through a public speaking engagement, an outreach event, a community presentation, we have one job, and that's to tell the story of the TPO in whatever format that looks like. We need to go where people are and not expect them to come to us. I think that's one thing that government agencies, I think, have changed, but we really need to go to the table of where people are in their communities and think outside the box a little bit, instead of always hosting, a meeting in the same location, year after year. So it's our responsibility, really, to engage them and to educate them. Speaking of outreach, again, this year we've kind of been focused on reinvesting in our community partnerships. Shelby touched on a little bit of that, and I just wanted to highlight some things. One big thing I think this year is training safety advocates in our community. We are a team of 2. We cannot do it by ourselves. And really, we're not doing our due diligence if we're not out in the community training and working with others to go and do similar activities that we can do throughout the Space Coast. So we've redeveloped our outreach goals and our strategies, and we're really focusing on fostering those community partnerships and setting up communities for success at the end of the day to create that network of safety advocates. So Shelby had mentioned she held multiple trainings this year, specifically in helmet fit certification, which is one thing that the TPO is known for, but now we're training others, right, to do it out in their own community. We've shared lots of safety resources and materials with our municipalities, with Brevard Public Schools, with law enforcement. And we've given partners the tools to get involved, such as graphics and messaging. Sometimes our partners don't really know what to do, and it's easier to hit that share button rather than come up with their own content. Everyone's favorite topic. So I'm going to do something I'm going to put everyone on the spot. I want you to raise your hand if you use social media. Okay, keep your hand up if you have more than one on one platform. So do you have Facebook and LinkedIn? That counts as 2 platforms. Okay, you can put your hands up. So in 2023, an estimated 4.9 billion people use social media across the world. And all these users typically are not tied to a single platform either. You saw a lot of us have multiple platforms. The average user now spreads their digital footprint across 6 to 7 platforms on social media. So it highlights, for the TPO, it highlights our effort as a need to be on multiple platforms so that we're reaching different audiences. Social media is really integrated into daily life now for many, and it unveils a lot of countless opportunities for businesses and organizations and government agencies like ours to get involved and to look to reach out to our audience online. the point is, whether we're on social media or not, our community is having conversations about us. They're saying, why aren't they doing X, Y, and Z? Or, how can I get involved? And it's our job to help steer that conversation and to lead it in the right direction and to tell our story. So each of these platforms has a very specific audience type, and we strategically plan our social media content to benefit those audiences. And in your full report, you have the measures of effectiveness and all that and our goals. So I just want to highlight that. So here's a brief summary of our tools and their associated measures of effectiveness numbers. The definitions and the terms are in your report. I'm not going to bore you with that. But our numbers kind of reflect by and far that our public citizens and our members and our stakeholders, they want to receive, like I said earlier, that information digitally. So I just want to pull out one example out of that table regarding our digital communications via Constant Contact, which is what we use for our invites, our newsletters. Someone said to me today, I think it was Sarah, she's like, I get stuff from you all the time. That's great. That means I'm doing my job. So thank you. But I wanted to pull out that statistic specifically because I think it speaks volumes to where we are as an organization. Right now for Constant Contact as a platform and across many different industries, they use this platform for their communications. The overall average industry for a standard open rate, which means how many people, percentage-wise that you're sending to open their actual email, is 34.4%. We are definitely above that. And then the click rate is only 1%, and we are above that too. So even though our click rate, you can see, kind of took a little dip year over year, we're looking for ways to improve with video embedding and resends and A/B testing and lots of nerdy things in the communications world. But all of that to say that we are really doing our part, I think, compared to other industries and even to some of our sister organizations. Despite having different campaigns every year on social media, I think our statistics kind of speak for themselves. We continue to grow our audience and increase engagement, and that's really what we want to see. We don't want to see a decrease in engagement, because then that means that we're not doing our part in having that open dialogue with our digital audience. Most importantly, whether we get comments that are negative, positive, neutral, they want to be part of the process, and that's really key for us in any government agency being on social media, that it's all good, because that means that they care, and that's the overall goal. But if we are benchmarking ourselves, because I like to do that, in comparison to some of our sister organizations, which we love, but we currently have the Facebook audience size of MetroPlan Orlando and Miami-Dade MPO combined. So our audience size is larger than both of those entities combined. And if you know those areas, we know that those are huge. No shame to them, but I think we've done an amazing job growing our audience, specifically on that platform. And so when we're telling our story, we really are strategic with our content. We're not just throwing something up to have something for the day. We use content calendars. Shelby and I meet, weekly basis, but also monthly and quarterly to make sure that we're covering all the topics that we need to, and that we're kind of differentiating some of the content, whether it's safety awareness, some feel-good things, some partnerships, outreach events. You kind of see it all on there. But the bottom line is that we want to keep engaging our audience. But on the other token, we also now have some branded deliverables, and this is something that I've been wanting to do ever since I came to the TPO. We kind of had a little Band-Aid situation for a while, but it wasn't as professional. But over the past year, we felt a need to tell our own story, and with the help of our consultant HCR, we have created some amazing deliverables to start to tell that branded story out in the community. And so some of our previous materials, they were branded with FDOT or other safety, regional safety partners. And so we had no deliverables that had our logo on it, that told our story. And so now we have these 3 new deliverables, in addition to your lovely Vision Zero fan. We have a 1-pager all about the TPO, so it's easy to pass out at venues that you're at, chamber events, networking events. And then we also have 2 specific rack cards that we use out at our outreach events to talk about the education opportunities that we can offer, and also Vision Zero, because that is really our goal at the end of the day, no matter what we do. It's our goal to continue to develop this brand kit in 2024 and going forward, because there's lots of things for the TPO that we could use as a deliverable to tell our story. On that note, earlier this year, we distributed our 2022 annual report, and this really served as the foundation of starting to tell that story in a visual way. And it was a long-term goal to produce this document that was interactive and had different components, and we accomplished that. And it's award-winning both at the local and state level, which I think is a great accomplishment to highlight. Lastly, even though we tell our own story, we need our news media friends to be on our side and to help tell our stories too, because they have a much larger reach, right? Whether it's broadcast or our local newspaper, it's really important to invest in those local media partnerships because they'll be there for you on a bad day and they'll be there for you on a good day if you have the right relationship with them. So we're really lucky that we have great news media relationships. We respond in a timely manner. We're very cognizant of it. And last year, this is just a snapshot of some of the stories that we had. And we had 81 news media features, whether that was, again, in the different mediums. So very proud of that. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions for Abby?
Adam.
I got a couple. Talk to me about these three categories here on the measures of effectiveness. Email campaigns, open rate. Can you explain this a little bit better?
Yes, I don't know if I have a slide specific for that.
Page 109.
Well, in the report, so it calls that out specifically. So are you talking about the different terms that are listed, like the open rate, click rate, and what was the last one?
Yeah, so what is email campaign open rate? What does that mean?
So an open rate is the, however many people you send it to, there's a percentage of how many actually open your email.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the click rate is very similar. How many people that are opening your email go in and click the links that are provided? So when we send out our newsletters, they look like little buttons, or we'll make sure that they're hyperlinked in blue font so people know that they're a link.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Abby? Okay, Abby, good job.
Thank you.
Great to have you back.
Yes, thank you.
All right, we'll move on from presentations to reports, and our first report is from the Florida Department of Transportation. Morning, sir.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you were here at last month's meeting, my supervisor, John Scarf, introduced me as Chuck Copperl, your new MPO liaison for the FDOT. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is start opening the meetings, my reports with lane closures that are going on throughout the county. Specifically today, NASA Boulevard from Wickham Road to State Road 5. We have single lane closures east and westbound so they can install an ITS system at various intersections. Their lane closures will occur this week, same as last week, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Next project, State Road 520 from Aurora Road to Hubert Humphrey Causeway. They will also have single lane closures east and westbound from Aurora Street to Var Avenue for construction activities. And this project is focused on safety and mobility improvements, and their closures will be 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. this week. There was a closure last month that's carrying on to this month. However, the schedule has changed. On the Fifth Avenue project from Riverside Place to Miramar Avenue, they will have single lane closures east and westbound from A1A to Riverside Avenue for paving. Last month, they were closing lanes from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., but now they've moved it from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So hopefully that'll help out with a lot of delays and stress to the drivers out there. So that's the way I am planning to opening my reports, and I will also include any FDOT public engagements that will be happening here in Brevard County, which there aren't any planned this month, and also to give you some heads up on some projects that are going to be starting up the next month, which there aren't any this month yet. But that's the way I plan to do it. So also as your newly appointed MPO liaison, the one thing I want to do is make sure I'm getting close relationships with everybody in this room so that I can understand exactly what your passions are, but it's not only your passions, but the citizens you are representing. So hopefully I can anticipate things that are arising and bring them to your attention as soon as possible. I'll also be working through Georgiana to make sure that she's aware of everything that's going on. And since she's former FDOT, she pretty much knows everything that's going on anyway. So I'm going to keep it short and sweet this time, but I also want to remind you all, you have the privilege of seeing me give the first MPO board brief ever. And also, I want to know who's going to have the privilege of asking me the first question.
Christie.
I would thought it was going to be you, Ms. Twigg. Yes, ma'am.
Why didn't the project for Hollywood and US 192 start? What's the delay?
Which one is that, ma'am? I'm sorry.
So if you look at your first page, your number is 433655-1, State Road 500 at Hollywood Boulevard. And no comment about Massey, but as a contractor, your estimated start is September 2023. It's not started, so what's the delay?
I will find that out for you, ma'am.
Yep. Chuck, I wanted to just quickly mention 192 in Hollywood, that intersection was a top priority on our priority list for quite a few years. And so definitely that's going to provide a lot of bang for the buck. And Laura and I were actually just talking, wondering if it was officially under construction. So it probably is imminent. Sometimes there are things going on that you can't see, but it would be good to understand where
Absolutely.
that's at. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Ginger.
I have a question about that Hollywood project. Is there going to be any accommodations with Sharrow or bikes may use full lane in crossing 192?
Could you say that one more time for me, ma'am?
Any accommodations of any signage or
Oh.
road markings for cyclists that want to cross over 192 since there's no bicycle facilities on Evans or Hollywood?
Mm-hmm.
To get through that intersection and be able to control the lane safely and be visible?
Crossing 192, right?
Correct.
I will find that out as well.
Cool, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you be kind enough to let us know what the safety improvements are going to be on the 520 King Street from Aurora Road to Hubert Humphrey? What exactly is happening with safety on that particular upgrade? And when do you think, it says estimated completion fall 2024, so it looks like you're going to be out there a long time.
Okay.
Also. You
So
know-
Chuck, I can probably answer that if you don't mind.
Please.
That particular project was a complete street project that the city of Cocoa, it was a vision that they had to make that corridor more walkable. As you can tell, you know, if you travel that, people are flying. And so it was a severe challenge for the pedestrians to get across the road without getting hit. And so we funded a feasibility study. We developed a complete street concept. The city of Cocoa supported it. The DOT had a major resurfacing to come through, and we added additional funding, so the TPO's federal funding, to make it more walkable, I think widen the sidewalks, put in more curbs, just to take out what they call the slingshot lane, which people will fly around and then try to get in front of you. That's coming out. So it's really to tighten it up, continue the traffic flow. It's not going to impede traffic flow, but to just make it more walkable. And so it's a mess right now, but once it's done, it's really going to be a wonderful project for the community and for the downtown, the Cocoa Village area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Georgiana. Any other questions for Chuck?
I got one more for the Galaxy Way and Kennedy Parkway project. Is that going to be accommodating vulnerable users or cyclists through there? That route is utilized by the Intercoastal Century bike ride for the last 40 years.
Okay.
It is a corridor that's used, and considering that a couple of the astronauts and the previous Space Center director are all cyclists, it'd be really nice to make sure they're safe.
Absolutely. I'll check into that. too.
Pretty sure, Ginger, there are no bicycle facilities along that corridor, and the reason is, I don't know
I
if
know
you've
what it
noticed the
is.
very large rockets that travel that corridor. And of course, Space Florida could not be here today due to a conflict, but putting bicycles and pedestrians around those very large rockets that Blue Origin have. The two don't really go hand in hand.
But that route has been there for 40 years as a cyclist corridor.
Yes, this was Space Florida's decision, or, the space industry's decision on that.
Interesting, because Bob Cabana
I understand.
and the astronauts are cyclists, and they ride on that property regularly.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen, but we can certainly ask our Space Florida partners.
Okay, anything else for Chuck? Go ahead, Frank.
Two simple things. One, I'd be interested to go ahead and find out the effect that speed limit reduction on A1A, went from 45 to 35. And I have my own idea, which is good. The second thing is, we had some construction on South Patrick Drive, and somebody asked me a question, what's going on? I said, I don't know. And they dug up, part of South Patrick Drive and had traffic going, and they looked like they were installing some fiber optics or something, wiring and that type of thing. I'm not sure. But I would think that we would be at least, in the know from the city what's happening, instead of just appearing.
All right.
The thing that I'm really upset about is the curb to the sidewalk. There's a green area there, and it's an awful shape. In other words, when they finished it, it's just awful. That's it. I don't like to talk too much.
Okay, thank you, Frank.
I would mention, Frank, the A1A, the department did finalize a study after they reduced the speeds, and we did get a copy of that. And I think we got it like within the last month or so, so we can forward that to you so that you could take a look at it. But they did monitor, definitely cars were driving slower. They're still speeding, but it was like a 10 mile per hour reduction, I believe, so I will forward that to you.
Yeah, the only comment I have to say, I ride that road early in the morning when I go play golf and then come back at the same time. And there is a noticeable, decrease in speed. There's no doubt about it. And the people that go 55 still, I don't know how they keep on going without getting a ticket, that type of thing. You notice that right away. But it is noticeable. And pedestrians, I think, feel more comfortable crossing the street. They seem to anyway, and using the, procedure to go across.
I use A1A quite a bit myself. I drive that corridor a lot, but I'm a cyclist, and I really enjoy riding on A1A now. It has a really good bike lane, but with the reduced speed limit, I like it a lot better. I feel really, much more comfortable. So, I'll ride from Cocoa Beach to Sebastian Inlet, so I really do like it. Okay, anything else for Chuck?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Chuck. All right, Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee. Sarah, good morning.
All right. Good morning. I'm Sarah Crom. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner for the Space Coast TPO. On September 18th, the Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee met to review the recommendations that were made for the BPAC strategic assessment and provide their recommendation. I just wanted to provide you a brief overview of what the strategic assessment went over, and then the BPAC recommendation, which is what we'll be moving forward. So actually, it was about this time last year, we approved a notice to proceed to begin a BPAC strategic assessment under contract with one of our consultants. It was expressed to us from some of our BPAC members that they wanted to take a look at the direction of the BPAC, as well as also some things that us as staff had seen. So just to review kind of where the BPAC has been, and is that the BPAC was developed to really address a lack of bicycle, pedestrian, and trail planning within the Space Coast TPO. Since then, bicycle pedestrian trail planning is now institutionalized in every aspect that we do through various plans and programs, not only on the planning side, but as you also saw on the outreach side. Transportation alternative funding is prioritized through project prioritization methodology procedure, so all projects are ranked considering bike, ped, trail, transit facilities. So every single project that is put on our list of project priorities is considered more valuable or with more points if it includes those facilities. FDOT also considers all streets as complete streets through consideration of context classification, as well as also the BPAC has had some major trail wins. So the Eastern Florida Regional Rail Trail is completed up in Titusville, yay. Space Coast Trail is funded for construction, so that will go out on to Mare Island National Wildlife Refuge. The North Mare Island Pioneer Trail has a mile-long section at Kings Park that is completed, as well as the rest of it is awaiting a feasibility study funding via Sun Trails. I think we're going to see that this year. We're keeping our fingers crossed. And Brevard Zoo Trail has 3 miles completed, as well as also the Southern Brevard Owl Tuttle Trail has this portion completed and is. And earlier today, you approved the work order for a Southern Brevard Trails master plan, which will then go to our governing board. So lots of wins from the BPAC. So the BPAC strategic assessment basically went through a process where a survey went out. This was sent out to all boards and committees. So TAC-CAC had an opportunity, as well as our governing board and the BPAC. That the survey results were reviewed at a workshop with the BPAC back in March, as well as also a SWOT analysis was conducted. From the survey results and the SWOT analysis done at the workshop, our consultant developed recommendations. We worked with the consultant to massage those, really consider them, and we presented those in June. The BPAC asked for more opportunity to consider and marinate on the recommendations. So we came back, we postponed our August meeting due to when it looked like one of the hurricanes potentially could have an impact, and we were having quorum issues. So it ultimately in September. So during September, we had the conversation once again with the BPAC about recommendations, and they came up with this action, which, as I mentioned, is what will be moving forward. So the BPAC made a motion to remain intact with their current makeup. They would like an additional workshop to work towards developing a more defined role, and staff will be developing an orientation and workshop in response to the motion. So that is where the BPAC is in a nutshell. So in December, we will be doing an orientation. We'll have a conversation with them about what they would like at the workshop, so that we are feeling like we're responding to what their wishes for a workshop is. And then in January, we'll hopefully move forward with that workshop and start working on defining their role further. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Sarah? Okay.
Thank you.
We'll move on. Space Coast Area Transit Report. Good morning.
Good morning. Debbie Flynn, Transportation Planner, Space Coast TPO. On behalf of Space Coast Area Transit, they do not have an update to their transit report. However, I have a little update. The Transit Development Plan Rider Survey will be running from October 16th through November 17th on Space Coast TPO and Space Coast Area Transit's website and their social media outlets. You all have a QR code with you today. At your convenience, I would greatly appreciate if you could take the survey. Starting October 16th, it's not live yet, but your input will be greatly appreciated and be put in our Transit Development Plan report. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, Debbie, thank you. Okay. Public Engagement Report. Abby.
Hello again. I'll try to keep this one a little bit more brief. So this is a standing item that we have on for our new members at meetings. And so what we typically do is recap things that have happened over the past few months and then looking forward, since we won't meet again until December. So before we chat about some upcoming activities for October, November, I want to touch on a few wins for our organization the last few months. In August, Shelby and I attended Brevard Public Schools Partner in Education Fair. If you haven't heard about the Partners in Education, Brevard Public Schools has a program for businesses, government organizations to join to get connected to the schools. We've always had really great relationships with the schools, but this has provided us another avenue to have direct contacts at those schools that we can follow up with on safety needs specifically. So we talked to the coordinators about some of their traffic safety needs. We passed out safety resources, high visibility vests for their car loop, and also some water bottles. So it's a really great way to get reconnected with that school community. And then in September, Shelby worked with Helping Seniors of Brevard by serving on a panel that they had at 2 different locations. The panel was called Your Transportation Checklist, and this happened at Zon Beachside and Buena Vista Estates, and really talked about the importance of getting to their destination safely. Really great way to stay engaged with that senior citizen community. It's what we want to do more of in the future as well. And then in September, our senior transportation planner, Sarah, she served on a panel discussion with the City of Cape Canaveral and Kittleson and Associates, one of our consultants, at the Florida American Planning Association's annual conference, where they discussed approaches to community resiliency, and she shared our Transportation Resiliency Master Plan. September was also busy for Shelby. She led a teacher training for Brevard Public Schools PE teachers, and where they learned various aspects of our bicycle and pedestrian safety curriculum. They even took it to the road, and they experienced what their students would learn through the program. So 11 new schools will now be able to reserve our trailers that are equipped with bicycles and gear to teach safety lessons in the schools. So hopefully you saw this one on social media, but also in your own communities. Last week, we partnered with Brevard Public Schools to celebrate Walk and Roll to School Day, and this event is an annual one, and it's really designed to remind families that there are other modes of transportation of getting to school. You know, over the course of years, we've seen a lot more kids get driven into school, but it's a reminder that there's benefits to walking to school, to riding your bike to school. And so we're very excited. 34 schools participated. That's a really great number. And they held many events, you know, from holding banners to marching bands to walking through their community as a group, as a neighborhood. It was really cool to see. And so upcoming, we are focusing this year by supporting many Halloween events throughout our community. This is the one night a year where, unfortunately, we see children get hit the most, right? Because they're trick-or-treating, they're running in and out of driveways and sidewalks. And so we are trying to do our best to get out in the community and to share safety resources. But also one thing that we're gonna do is pass out glow sticks this year to remain safe and seen. Of course, we'll also have messaging for motorists that they need to be on high alert as well. So it takes all road users. Some things coming up on social media. October is National Pedestrian Safety Month, so we'll be sharing some safety tips, again, both for all road users. It ties in with a lot of the things that we're doing throughout the month. And then October 15th, we're raising awareness about Blind Americans Equality Day. This is a national observance to celebrate the achievements of people who are blind or visually impaired, and the important symbol of blindness and the tool of independence, the white cane. At your seat today, Shelby has left a white cane resource that you can learn more about that. And then we also have Teen Driver Safety Week and School Bus Safety Week. October is all the things. So we're trying our best to cover all this great information on our social media platforms. Most importantly, this is the month of Mobility Week. And this month it falls at the end of the month. So it's October 27th through November 4th, and at your seat today, you have a flyer of all the events that we'll be doing for Mobility Week. So for those who are new to the group, Mobility Week is a celebration of making smart, efficient, and safe and multimodal transportation choices. So it's really about getting out of your car and experiencing a different mode of transportation: bus, walk, bike, scooter, what have you. So during Mobility Week, cities and counties and partner agencies, we take it as an opportunity to highlight maybe some new initiatives in transportation, some achievements, choices, and especially special events. So organization and Space Coast Area Transit, we partner together every year. We had a proclamation that you gave approval on for consent, and there it lists all of our planned activities. But a few highlights. We are doing Tri-Transportation in EGAD, the Ogali Arts District. So join us for a Safe Walking for Life workshop. This is designed for aging road users, where attendees will learn more about walking safely in their community. And then at the same event, we're partnering with Space Coast Area Transit, where the attendees will talk transit with Director Terry Jordan, and they're going to be able to ride a hybrid electric bus. It's free to attend, but you must register, so look for that. We're going to be sending out the save the date. On the same day, it's perfect. It aligns with that event that day. It's Tri-Transit Thursday. So for anyone who shows the mobile app, if you want to ride that day on transit, it's free. And lastly, this is a save the date. For the third year, our organization will host an event for World Day of Remembrance of Road Traffic Victims. This event is really a chance to remember those who have lost their lives in the tragedy of preventable crashes. So as Shelby mentioned earlier, it's really about humanizing these statistics. And so we take this as an opportunity to highlight those lives and the mission of Vision Zero. This year, the event is going to be held on Sunday morning, November 19th at the Cocoa River View Front Park. So we'll be sending out a flyer to save the date soon. That's it. As always, make sure you follow us on social media too.
Okay, thank you, Abby. Anything for Abby? All right. Okay, and next is a local government report. Does anyone have a local government report? Okay, anything else? All right, thank you for your participation today. This meeting is adjourned.
No meeting in November. We're off in November.